that is Kenny was obviously, to me, the worst player on the field. I think he was a bigger issue than Matt Canada was. People are talking about like the offensive coordinator and stuff. I think that's low hanging fruit for this at this point for Steelers fans. Kenny was the worst player on the field on Sunday. If you're disputing that, I think that you are really looking for, you're just like, it's hopium. And I think that you're in denial on the way that it actually was on Sunday. But I guess the question becomes, is that a product of the 49ers defense or what? Because I'm just so confused about it, because it's not even, there were obviously times where Kenny looked bad last year as a rookie, and you would expect that. This was a completely different level of bad, and it was totally different reasons. Like, he was inaccurate. Like, the accuracy is the big thing for him. If he's not going to be accurate, then yeah, the lack of physical tools that he has, he can't make up for it if he's going to be inaccurate. So that was really concerning to me. I just didn't think he was going through progressions well. There were times where, the Deontay Johnson, the first interception he threw where Deontay falls down, obviously it's unfortunate Deontay falls down. If that doesn't happen, it's probably not a pick, but it's still a really bad decision by Kenny. That's his first read of the progression, worked through them all, and then comes back to the first guy. That typically isn't going to go well, and then throws it. Deontay falls down, and it's a pick. I think that everything that he did in this game was just bad. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, when you throw 40 sometimes, there's going to be throws that he made that were good and some things he did well.
Right.
But in totality, this was, in my opinion, the worst game he's had as a pro, and maybe overall. And I had this conversation with Alan, maybe overall, even including college, because the only other one that comes to mind is when he had like 8 yards versus Clemson. But the talent discrepancy of those teams was ridiculous. Like, that's not the case on an NFL Sunday.
That's the thing. I was about to say, without hyperbole, I have watched a lot of Kenny Pickett in my day. I watched every game of him at Pitt, and I was at that game where he threw for 8 yards against Clemson in the 2018 ACC Championship, and I believe that was the worst game I've ever watched Kenny play. He was bad, and I don't think that his box score does it justice for how bad he actually was. Because when you look at it just on the surface, 31 of 46, 232 yards, a touchdown, and 2 picks. I genuinely don't think that shows how bad Kenny was on Sunday, because it is
also Fred Warner dropped the third interception. And that was the easiest one that he threw. Like, it was literally right into his chest.
Yeah, agreed. I don't think it shows how bad he was, because what you can't see on the box score is what you were talking about, like with that Deontay Johnson slipping and he throws a pick. Like, that play should have never happened. That read should have never been thrown to. And yet it was. And we saw that throughout the entire game, like questionable decisions. Like, I think back to the one play that was an incomplete pass in the end zone, where I watched that play over and over again, and I'm still not sure who he was throwing to. I mean, the Steelers had the ball on around like the 15-yard line, I think. He throws it into the end zone. I'm like, I have no idea where this is going to. There's guys in the area, but there's no clear, like, this is who he was targeting. I have no idea what it was. The decision
making by that?
Kenny was, I'm trying to think of what it was. It was in the.
I was wondering if it was the 4 where they went for it on 4th down, but that was from the 8. And they ran 4 verts from the 8-yard line, which is insane.
I know he threw it over the middle. That's what that's my best memory of it. I don't know the actual situation. I can't remember the situation, but I know he threw it over the middle. There were some Steelers in the area, but there was also several defenders. It was just very confusing to me as to what the decision-making process was. And that's the main thing that was so un-Kenny Pickett-like, I felt like, is that normally, like, he can make mistakes, and he has in the past, but you didn't see all of the mental errors that he was making in previous games like you did on Sunday. And so that's where the hyperbole is. There's no hyperbole for me. Like, this is his worst game that I've ever seen him play at the college or NFL level, because his decision making, the progressions that he was making, but then making decisions on top of those progressions were just bad. I think he was also. Yes, this is the play. If you're watching on YouTube.
Is it? Okay. So this is the one I'm talking about. They ran 4 verts on. Oh, wait. Why is it not?
They ran 4 verticals, and Kenny gets the ball and immediately is throwing it over the middle. I'm not sure. Like, is that supposed to go to Freiermuth? Because
what's funny is if he waits longer, and I know that he can't, like you're talking, Jalen Warren comes out of the backfield on this. It's like a
right,
delayed, like he's supposed to show that he's a blocker and then come out of the
right,
backfield.
yeah.
He could have hit him, and maybe it's a touchdown because this linebacker moves off of him. But yeah.
And speaking of that, I feel like there were like a couple more plays throughout this game where Kenny was making mistakes of either getting out of the pocket too early before he needs to. It's like he felt phantom pressure when he didn't have to move, or he was throwing the ball before and getting rid of the ball too quickly whenever he could have held it onto it for a couple more seconds and another guy could have been open. I feel like when you saw like the all 22 footage, there were several times throughout this game where that happened. And so there is without a doubt, no doubt in my mind, this is the worst game that Kenny has ever played. And like you said, the people who are blaming Matt Canada over Kenny Pickett, I feel like that's being a Kenny Pickett apologist right now. And believe me, I am a huge Kenny supporter, but this is not on Matt Canada. Sure, he has his share of the blame just like everybody does, but this is nothing different than what we've seen in Matt Canada's past games. Like there's no difference to it. And we've seen this offense be able to be executed. We saw it at the end of last season with Kenny Pickett. And I see, like, looking at the pass charts from Kenny on Sunday, there's no difference. It's just they didn't execute anything. And starting with Kenny Pickett, he was the worst one on the field. And that is the main thing that needs to change for the Steelers going into next week. Because if this is the Kenny that you're going to get, and what is the main difference? Like, what from what we saw in the preseason to week 1 against San Francisco, like, is it playing the 49ers defense? Like, I just can't come up with anything that makes you that mentally that mental switch of the hesitancy or the decision making. Like, that is just night and day from what we saw in the 3 games that we saw him in the preseason to what we saw on Sunday.
Yeah, that's the thing that's so weird to me and so confusing. It's like, I mean, the follow-up question here that I want to say is, do you have hope that he's going to be able to play better on Monday night and turn it around? It's just, how do you have a yes or no answer to that when you don't even know what went wrong in this game? Like, you don't know what the reason was that happened because it's just so uncharacteristic of him. Like, if he were to have played bad because he's trying to fit the ball into tight windows or whatever, and they're trying to take shots down the field, or the offensive line is totally getting caved in and he's taking a bunch of sacks or something like that, then it's a different conversation. But if he's kept relatively clean, and even when he has good pockets, he's just flat out missing guys by, like, not even when we say Kenny's accurate, it's not even necessarily like fitting the ball into tight windows and sticking it right on guys' hands, but he's able to put it on a receiver. He's missing guys by like 3 yards. I mean, there's a play to Deontay Johnson.
That should have been a touchdown.
It's an easy 6. Yeah, it's a layup for any NFL quarterback, really, or it should be NFL quarterback. Totally
threw it behind him.
Yeah, totally misses him. There's another one to Deontay trying to rip the ball up the seam, misses him by a good 5 yards. Like, high too. I just, so it's just, I don't know. I don't know if you even have an answer on this, because I certainly don't. I don't know what to think about. Like, I would like to think that there's no way he can be as bad as he was this week, but is there reason to think that he's going to improve to the level of what he looked like in the preseason? Like, what version of Kenny Pickett do you think we're going to get on Monday night? And keep in mind too, we're about to talk about the fact that he's not going to have Deontay Johnson.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. The one thing I will say about Kenny is he's taking his lumps in stride, and whenever he makes, like, I think about the early parts of the last season when Kenny was coming in, like that Eagles game, the Miami game, throughout that season, we saw the mistakes that Kenny was making, and Kenny took those very seriously, and he put in the work to improve upon those. And so, yeah, it's a shock that Kenny regressed this much in game 1 from what we saw, not only just in this preseason, but what we saw him end the season with last season. But that is what's going to give me some belief, some hopium, I guess, if you want to call it that he'll improve on Monday night against the Browns. Is that, like, Kenny is somebody who is going to look at this, see what went wrong, and really study what to improve upon. And because we've seen that in the past. I mean, we saw it in college. We saw it just his rookie season last year, that he wants to improve upon his mistakes, and he's going to grind to be able to do so. So that is, to me, would be the one thing that sticks out. Not even necessarily just anything like trait wise that I think could be different, just his mentality that he's going to have after this game. I feel like he's going to be the hardest working guy in practice this week, because he's going to look at the film, and if I know Kenny Pickett, which I don't, but if I know Kenny Pickett, he's going to say, like, I sucked and I need to improve upon this.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time believing he's not himself thinking he's the biggest reason they lost this football game. I know that